I think patriarchy is when men just kind of dominate things. And I think it's interesting that women complain about it, but also want to stay at home.
Uh-oh.
I have a career. I'm 24 years old. I'm an engineer. I live on my own. But I'm also, like, I kind of just, like, want to be a stay-at-home mom at some point. And chill out.
What up, YouTube? I am your host, Mediocre tutorials and reviews. Back in here with one more video. Guys, you're looking at the thumbnail. You're looking at the title of the video. You already know what time it is. It is time to get active. Shout out to YouTube content creator, It's Complicated. Guys, link down in the description box down below. All right, he's almost at 30K subscribers. Let's try to get him to 40, okay? He just uploaded a video. I did watch a component of this video. It's a good one. Entitled Patriarchal Society, Rules of Modern Dating and Understanding Women. Without further ado.
Why is it that a woman's love is more likely something that needs to be earned through courtship than a man's love?
Why is it that a man, like, what?
In other words, like why is it, why don't women court men? Why does society set things up that way, that men are expected to court women in order to earn her love?
But on the other side of this spectrum here, I'm just gonna say, like, that just goes back to the patriarchy real quick.
God.
Because, like, I don't know, like, women, yes, we're not, like, that is societal standards. Things are changing now as, like, women get more rights and, like, feminism and we start to progress in the world. However, like, with that social standard with men, there's also a lot of privileges that come with that. So it's like, it could be switched up. It could be the other way around, but then you have to also accept the other privileges on the other end of that. Like, that's just how our society is set up right now. It's not right, but what's to say the other way is right either?
It's Complicated interviewer. I don't know how you sit there. I feel like he asked these questions and then he has an innate ability to just not listen. Because, listen, and I think I do a pretty good job of holding my face relatively in place as someone is just clearly talking completely and utterly out of their ass. But his level of stoicism must be unfathomable, simply, okay? Asking a question of this courtship, right? What men have to do in order to prove love and it being normalized. That's just a consequence of the patriarchy. That's just it's just, we all have certain privileges and, you know, that is just how it's just set up right now of the patriarchy. You know, never, not never in the history of ever do you hear those with these typical feminist ideologies ever just say that there's just a difference in our expectations of men and women, and this is how the society is today. But no, it's the patriarchy. It's men being oppressive to women as to show why men need to show love more. It makes complete and utter nonsense, but it's what we have tolerated for years on end. Thank you, college institutions and universities. We appreciate your push. Thank you.
I feel like, honestly, it's on the person. Like, you shouldn't have to earn no one's love. You should go into something loving yourself first. And, you know, like, if you make each other happy, cool. You should accept each other for who they are and, you know, what it is. And if you're doing everything you can to make somebody happy and it's not working, then, you know, you don't have to accept that and settle. You could just do your thing. If that's not the type of love that you're into, then, you know, sorry, excuse my language, but fuck it, sorry.
I mean, men don't always have to be, like, it's not so much like that anymore where it's men always being the aggressors in the relationship,
Right.
I guess. It's like, I think also women, again, don't feel that comfortable going up in being an aggressor in a relationship. And a lot of times, men don't really want that whole courtship experience. A lot of men are very visually focused.
Why sex when it comes to birthing children, but conveniently the weaker sex when it comes to risking rejection, needing sympathy and validation, killing spiders, opening jars, lifting heavy objects, and fighting wars?
Great question.
I wouldn't say necessarily that second part is true. I think that's kind of the stereotype that we've given women. And I also feel like living in a patriarchal society, I feel like that's just how it's worked. But I wouldn't say that one outweighs the other.
Yeah. Same answer. Two different concepts, two different ways of human behavior, and I think it's a really small thing and a really big thing.
Well, yeah, but do you think that women want equality when it's convenient but are happy to revert to traditional gender roles when it's not?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't anybody do that?
Okay.
Isn't that like
At
a
least she's
normal
truthful.
human behavior?
Well, right, but
Yes.
just because you can take candy from a baby, does that make it right?
No, but I think humans don't always work on right and wrong.
What is patriarchy?
Big facts. I appreciate this follow-up question. If you could take candy from a baby, would you? It's such a good follow-up question because it puts in the question this idea of, well, you can, but should you? You can, but should you? That's key. That's instrumental because there's so many things that from a short-term benefit, you can, but should you? But if you look at the long-term ramifications of what that is and the implications on a society, you have a different perspective. But a lot of us, many of us, live in the short term or in the moment.
And why do so many women complain about it?
Well, can you please define patriarchy?
Okay. Would you agree that patriarchy is defined as a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I think women complain about it because it's prevalent and real in our society, and it's, women face that every day.
The patriarchy is the systematic and societal favoritism to masculine traits rather than feminine traits. So
That doesn't happen.
I personally am bothered by the patriarchy because in society, and it's not even just something that women should be upset about, men should be upset about it as well, because it prevents them from fully being their best selves as well. Because that's why so many men, when it's like, oh, like, men can't wear dresses, they can't do all that, they can't do things that are considered feminine, or at least that's what society tells us, because it would be emasculating to them, and they have to maintain the sense of masculinity. But on the other end of the spectrum, women, when they want to pursue more masculine things, it affects both genders as much, both sexes, I would say, both sexes as much as it, does women. Men get affected as much. It's just not as talked about. But I personally am bothered by it because I feel it's hard for me to be seen as respected in the world because of my femininity.
I think patriarchy is...
It's incredible to hear. At the end of the day, it's her truth, how she sees the world. I'd argue that how she sees it is mired by complete and utter biases. Complete and utter. This whole, we're still living in a patriarchy thing. Where do we currently live that by and large men are propped up in society? I think if anything that this section and portion of YouTube is demonstrating that it is false, it is fake, because there's so many young men that are yearning for information because they may not have had a father at home, right? They may not have had a male figure at home. They may have been raised by a mother that inflicted information on him to make him unattractive to the women today, mothered him, babied him. You understand me? And there's just so much of that happens because, especially within the black community, it is matriarchal in nature. Just from a numbers perspective, there's more women that are at the head of households in a black family, and it just happens. So they find all of this stuff. So let me ask you, if we're so much in a patriarchal society, why is it then also we are in a society that doesn't pay attention to male issues, right? Asking a random person, both male and female on the street, what are some male issues? Most would not know. But if you ask female issues, most would know. So we're aware. We have programs put in place such as affirmative action, right? But it doesn't mean that the numbers to increase equality of opportunity is where it needs to be. There might need to be some distance to go, but it still doesn't mean that we live in this pure and utter patriarchy and men are currently oppressing or suppressing women. Sometimes I don't even think like it's a victim mentality. I just think that it's brainwashing and it's propaganda. And it's put in there by feminists that are tired of men judging them or quantifying them because they're not attractive to those men, and have inflicted this feminist idea to these feminine women who really don't identify with feminists. Besides, the word feminist sounds like feminine, so it sounds like something that they should be a part of, and they get hooked on to the terminologies and the methodologies so easily and so quickly. And it's just like, you're putting all this toxicity in these young women's minds, and it's just like all of that stuff will do nothing to help them get a man, because they are not attracted to feminine men. It's just not the thing. But we hear all this airy fairy, however it is that you want to be. No, we need standards, we need morals, and we need ethics. Something that men can judge themselves by to let them know how well that they are doing at manhood. Let's keep it rocking.
I think patriarchy is when men just kind of dominate things. And I think it's interesting that women complain about it, but also want to stay at home. I have a career. I'm 24 years old. I'm an engineer. I live on my own. But I'm also like, I kind of just like want to be a stay-at-home mom at some point and chill out. But I'm not.
Little feminine lady.
It'd be so hypocritical of me if I was like,
think, mama.
Oh, men shouldn't go out in the workforce. And
Wait a minute. She is boiling. She is boiling. Let's keep it going. Look.
Go be a career person. I think everyone has equal
that would be like the opposite of patriarchy, and I think the point is not to do the opposite. The point is that for it to be equal, and the reason why women complain about the patriarchy is because it's prevalent in our society, and women
How is it prevalent? What is
Good question.
What does it do?
What gender have every single one of our presidents been?
What?
Yes.
That's the patriarchy.
Okay, but let me ask.
That's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous because you're just going to throw out the certain characteristics that men are or men have, right, that might make them good for that position. You're just going to throw all of that out. You're just going to throw all that out, okay? You can't do that, because the same argument can be made on the other side of the coin, which is to say you want to fight for equality when it comes to CEO positions, but what about fighting for equality when it comes to being a bricklayer? Well, let me understand your fight for equality when it comes to being a plumber. We got to stop looking at these arguments with such a broad and general brush. That's why this content needs critical thinking. It needs critique. It absolutely needs it. If you just let one idea permeate into the masses, this is what you get.
Let me ask you this about that, right? Do you think that the only qualification to be president should be just being a woman?
So actually, my mom and I
Good
was
question.
But I think because men are viewed as leaders and power figures based on our society is set up is why people are more likely to vote for men, because if you look at interviews, even some women are like, because women shouldn't be leaders, they're too emotional, and that's because society has set it up that way. And men are viewed as leaders. That's why the vast majority of men are all of the business leaders, the presidents, they're everything. They're always at the top.
I've never once said that about any woman, first. Second of all, my mom and I were just having this conversation because she's writing a book about, successful lead like a woman, and we were just talking about how when you get into the workforce, that this generation does have more women. We just haven't had the time to where we're in those positions yet. Right. And I bet in 20 or 30, but as a society, if you look at it, we're changing. You just have to give it that time, because back in the day, and actually, speaking of, and
it's changing because women are complaining about the patriarchy.
So when men all went off to war, all of the women worked, made all the money, got all the bacon, and then there wasn't that many men in the workforce because they all kind of died because of the war or things. And then when they came back, the women, I forget, someone explained this to me, but it was pretty much like our choice of going back. Like, we were doing just fine running everything.
So you're saying bringing home the bacon versus making the babies kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean,
produce versus reproduce.
Wasn't that kind of like,
historically, yeah.
Historically, okay. So then isn't patriarchy just the natural evolution of men and women just giving into their expected roles?
I mean, historically, a lot of things happened that weren't right. Well,
I'm just saying. Okay, so
listen, you have to ignore evolution. You have to ignore our history to take the position that you have. You just have to ignore it. You can't just, I mean, shit, even if you look back towards the suffrage movement, that was pushed by men. Most women didn't want the right to vote. Most didn't, because they didn't want the responsibilities of what that meant, going off to war potentially, all of these other different type of things. Let's keep it going.
I'm going to challenge this idea. Why is patriarchy seen as such a bad thing when women always expected men to provide?
I don't expect men to provide.
Well, right, but historically women did.
Well, that was just because.
That was what we were told to do. To be honest, we weren't allowed to do stuff as a woman.
Well, no, I'm saying hopefully we can change that now. But my point is, I'm saying that basically isn't the idea of patriarchy oppressing women based on a false premise? If women wanted men to provide, and so I'm just saying men went into the productive sphere and they built business empires, things like that. So now they're going to be leaders of industry because that's what they have been doing for the past 100 years.
Well, as a counterpoint to you real quick, it's not that we wanted men to provide historically, it's just that we weren't given any opportunities to provide for ourselves.
Yeah, if you want to
listen, I think like it's a little bit of both. I think that listen, and I'm on board for first, second wave women's rights movements. I'm on board with that. Give them opportunity of equality as long as they understand the repercussions for it as they go into their lives and get higher and higher ranks of education and, where they're working at, that they will be decreasing their chances, because men typically date down and women typically date up. They will be decreasing their chances of marriage, extremely long-term relationships. To me, it just says as long as they understand. Right? As long as they understand the negative repercussions, because the feminists don't talk about the negative repercussions, but we talk about them over here. But I think that it's interesting. I think that there's a degree of suppression, absolutely, that there was. But to think that it is currently happening today is completely and unequivocally false. I think the interviewer set up a fantastic question in the idea of, could it be we have a long history of producing as well, and there's certain characteristics that we have that make us good for being leaders that would also show why so many have been CEOs, why so many have been presidents, why so many have been whatever. Name the leadership function as supported by men's general leadership capabilities. But you have to ignore all of that, because if not, then you have to admit that perhaps men make superior leaders in general, in mass. Not all, but maybe. Let's keep going.
Talk about a hunter-gatherer sense. Sure, men would typically, and by the way, not all the time, because there's actually more historical evidence than people give credit for women hunting. But let's go ahead and assume you're correct, and that only men hunt. Sure, maybe, but that's not correct. But let's go ahead and assume that women actually produced a lot of the tools and the clothing that men used to hunt. So they were actually producing most of the economy. So if we look at a patriarchy, is it that men are producing more? No, not at all. It's just that they decided they wanted to take credit for it. But let's go. Next question.
But now you don't see that in society. You see women my age where honestly, it's 50-50. Like,
that's
in the
because
workforce.
women are trying to change it. That's the whole point.
We already are. It's not even trying. We are changing it. And you just have to give it time and stop bitching.
Okay, let me ask a few more.
And just be thankful.
Let me ask you a few more.
Work hard.
Let me ask you a few more questions that I think we'll get to an interesting point here, and this is what I'm really curious to see what you think. Okay, so now that we define patriarchy, do you think that patriarchy is the cause of gender roles, or is it the result of gender roles?
I think it's an excuse.
I think it's the result.
Okay, so then here's what I want to know.
They're not going to be friends for long.
Weren't men in the productive sphere while women were in the reproductive sphere? Okay, so isn't patriarchy just the natural evolution of men and women just giving into their expected roles?
Again, I think that goes back to survival. Like, those were the roles that we needed to survive back in the day. But again, today, we don't need those things. Women don't need to have children. Like, women can go out and do all the things that men do. You don't need to fall into those gender roles
But that's what makes us special. Men can have children. I want to do something they can't do.
Okay, but not every woman wants to have a child, and they shouldn't have to.
I never said they had to.
No one never said that argument.
I want to.
Okay, let me get to the next question then.
This is the most feminine argument I've ever seen. Let's keep it moving.
Why is patriarchy seen as such a bad thing when women always expected men to provide?
Oh.
I think that women were taught to expect that.
I personally enjoy
because
it.
of the patriarchy.
But you don't think but you don't think that's a biological thing because
I think it depends on who you are, like, and what.
Again, because it's different in every society. Some societies are matriarchal, so it all depends on society
Which
and where you're
ones?
from. A lot of
Say one.
old societies, like a lot of Native American societies,
And why are they not around anymore?
Uh-oh.
because
She
white
red
people
pilled.
killed all of them.
Actually, they were the ones who got.
Listen, the one on the left, you know what I'm saying? If anyone ever meets her and she wants you to pay for the first date, just bring up this video. Call her out on her bullshit, okay? Just call her out on the bullshit. Just call her out on the bullshit. Oh, you want me to pay? But wait a minute. What about this video over here where you were saying that XYZ ABC? Show her the video, okay? Show her the video. Let's see.
So, no, you actually don't know your history. Native Americans were also very mean to us as well. We fought each other. And you want to know why Jamestown got all the smallpox? Is when the Indians gave them gifts, like rugs and things, they actually put smallpox on the rugs. It'd be like putting COVID on someone and then giving them cake.
Okay, just a couple more questions related to that, right? Why should men be
History is
expected?
hard.
Spicy.
Interestingly enough, there are like societies in like Africa, I don't know, whatever different countries, where there's a matriarchy, where it's different. So I think there could be some sort of biological component to it. Like women, as you know, we tend to be better at controlling our anger and stuff and not being as, there are certain characteristics men and women biologically are more prone to having, not saying all the time, but I think that definitely plays in to characteristics, in society. Not saying that men should be in power because of it. It's just that we need to see feminine characteristics just as, highly respected as male characteristics,
Why should men be expected to just hand over all the power they've earned through their hard work?
I don't think that at all. I think if you want to work hard, you can get it. And I think
I don't think anyone's asking them to hand it over.
Yes, well, it's just, you shame them. You shame them for having it.
Facts.
No, we're saying that we want it to be more equal.
Then work hard. It's very equal for me in the workforce. As
Facts.
an engineer.
Again,
So here's the thing. It's the difference between what's taught in college and universities, okay? This victim mindset and mentality versus what is actually happening. Actually, there's not an active oppression and suppression of women by and large in mass. No, it's just not there. And so it's just hilarious to see her step through this.
you have privileges that other women don't.
How do I have a privilege?
Because you're white.
How? I work just as hard as my black friend in engineering. And we studied together, and she also has a job.
Well, basically, you can ensure equal opportunity, but you can't.
Here's the thing. She's like, why am I friends with her? She's an idiot. But here's a part of the argument. As a white woman, she also has benefits of affirmative action as well. But depending upon the school and the needs from a demographic of that school, the black engineer can have lower grades, but have a greater chance to get into that university depending upon the university's needs for diversity. Let's keep it going.
But you can't ensure equal outcome. So.
Well, no one can ensure outcome.
Nobody.
You really can't
Well, of
ensure
course, I
equal.
mean,
Why, so
yeah.
why do people
Unless they
like
rig
you
it.
can't just bitch and complain until you get an outcome that you want?
Go ahead.
I mean, how else do you think movements and revolutions started?
Not by bitching and complaining.
No, that's exactly what happened.
by asking.
And they did things. It's feminism and Black Lives Matter isn't bitching and complaining.
Movements are different than working hard. Those people worked hard to get what they wanted, including doing the movements. It's called working hard, and you.
So because men.
She don't like the victim mentality. Guys, I'm gonna cut off the video right here. I'm like maybe 3/5 through the video. So feel free to go down in there and finish the content. Go up to It's Complicated. Link down, description marks down below. Like the video, subscribe, and do all of that fun stuff. And continue to watch the rest of this video right here. Fantastic interview. That brother's talented out there. I believe he's out in Vegas doing all of these interviews. Keep it up, brother. Keep it up. We need this research, okay? We need this research. It's interesting to see even amongst similar friend groups, the dichotomy of the different ideas. But at the end of the day, I actually think that that promotes more understanding and more learning, having people around you with very different ideas. Like, why do you guys think that I bring Blue Pill Sam here? Okay, with very different ideas regarding dating and relationships than I do. But I think it makes me a better man having someone else that doesn't have my ideologies, and we just bang with each other, like even outside of all of the dating and relationship talk and shit like that. Who is in your circle that is challenging your ideas? Because at the end of the day, not only does it potentially reaffirm your own ideas, but it strengthens your arguments against the other point. Y'all can already tell right here who I agreed with in that conversation, but the other young lady was saying some things in there that I think that was worthy of consideration somewhat, okay? Questions, comments, concerns? Y'all already know what to do. Mediocre tourism reviews at gmail.com. Feel free to hit me up. Got a Patreon. We over 650 members in the building. Come through and let's get active. Until next time, YouTube.